Okay, boys and girls, it's error handling time. So the fact that we have a database that doesn't seem to be working very often is somewhat useful because we'll need to learn how to handle these errors. I have contacted our server technician to see what's going on. The site was up a second ago. Its connection was up. I have a feeling it just went down again. So we're going to talk about error handling. One of the other things some people ask for is, can we have slides to refer to? I will try to create some slides I have them for some lessons, not for all of them. I will try to post them where appropriate. So I do have slides for PHP error handling. I want to go over those now, and then we're going to implement them in our site. Yep, and we're back offline again. Ridiculous. Okay, so all kinds of things can go wrong. Some of these things are our fault, that we've got faulty code. Sometimes, we can't test every eventuality, so sometimes users may just do things that we didn't really plan for. Sometimes there can be issues, like right now, our connection to our database, for example, is going up and down. And other times we can be the victim of hacking attempts. So all these things can happen in a web application. So bugs might be logic problems, they might be syntax problems, and they'll usually generate error messages, or our pages will stop executing. So we want our code to have as few bugs as possible, but if the biggest companies in the world have to put out patches to fix errors, then chances are we're going to have to fix errors in our code, okay? Yes, Alex, is it not visible? It's this item right here. This error handling tutorial. Sorry, this error handling. So when you click it, so click on it, you may have to click the item in order to see the slides. Okay. Okay, so I just need to re-upload that. Thank you for letting me know that. I didn't realize that. So bear with me and I will re-upload the document. Okay. And I know it says lesson 8, but okay. Slides should be there now. Thank you for letting me. Just uploading now. Okay, good. Thanks for letting me know. Just reopen that. Okay, so what we need is we need a system in place. We need to anticipate errors are going to happen. So we need ways to handle them, and then typically record the errors and often create some sort of notification. We'll do some of these things. We have some limits in place. So we do want to test, but it's not possible to test every single scenario, or else you would never finish testing. Okay. So here are some common examples of things that might generate results we don't expect. So when we have file upload, someone might upload a file that is not of the type we're expecting. When we do formatting, so for example, in the US, there are actually people, most US postal codes have 5 digits, but there are postal codes that have 9 characters. We might add input validation for a standard North American phone number, and then we have someone come to our site and add a phone number that has a different format from a different part of the world. Or somebody may want to enter more data into a field than we were expecting. So those are some things users might do that we don't necessarily expect. We can have technical problems, server outages, internet connectivity. Well, we're kind of experiencing that now. An update to a browser, and then suddenly something that used to work no longer works, or even changes within operating systems. Okay, so these are things that are outside of our control, but they can affect our application. And then there are deliberate attacks on our applications, things like denial of service, SQL injection, which we've talked about, cross-site scripting. We'll look at some of these things next week as well. We're already dealing a lot with SQL injection by using bound parameters in our queries, where we do not inject inputs directly into our SQL statements, which leaves them vulnerable. We've also got password cracking attempts, so we'll look at ways to secure password the next week. Right? Very few applications are foolproof, but we do have to make sure we follow a number of best practices. Keep our applications safe. So here are some of the tools that we've got that we want to implement. We've got things like HTTP error codes. We can set up custom error pages. We're going to do that. We can use try-catch blocks that you're probably familiar with from your Java class. We're going to do that. And then beyond the scope of what we're going to do, but we could do things like log errors or send email notices when errors occur. In a production environment, these are a very good idea. So HTTP has a list of predefined errors, and you're familiar with some of the most common ones, particularly 404 not found. We're going to implement this 404 handling in our PHP tuned application. So we have a way to configure our application. If a 404 error happens, we can direct our users to a specific page. We will also create a custom error page so that if anything happens, like a database connection fails, instead of showing this to our user, right? This is not only ugly, it's unprofessional, but it's dangerous. It actually exposes my database credentials in the error message. So while we're developing, that's fine. We want this to fail. We want to see the error message so we can fix it. But once our application is ready to be deployed to the server, we want to handle these errors more gracefully. So we're going to create two custom error pages, a 404 page and then one for any database errors. And these pages will look like the rest of our site. It'll have our header with our nav bar so the user can at least navigate around if they get an error. So our try-catch blocks in PHP look very similar to what you would have done in Java. We use a try, we run our code here inside a set of curly braces, and then we can catch any exceptions. And we could send a notification, or in our case, we will redirect to our error page. You could create an error log, which is typically a text file. It will store information. I can show you one of these. These are often generated automatically by web servers. So here's one I downloaded from one of my hosts today. Here's an old weblog file from a few months ago. So if I search here for 404, so here I can see these generated. So a GET request that /feeds from this IP, it generated a 404 response. So I can see the date, time, the IP address, what URL they tried to access, and that it generated a 404 not found. The other thing we can commonly do is send email notifications. I typically do this with my client websites. In my catch blocks, I would send myself an error message. So it would give me the error, give me the URL. If the customer was logged in, user was logged in, it would give me their username, so I knew who it was. If they were completing a form, it would send me all the inputs in the form. And then it would give me the stack trace or line number on that page. So sometimes I'd go to bed at night, wake up in the morning, there would be errors in my inbox. I could see exactly what page they happened on. I could see what the error was. I could go and try it out. And oftentimes I could correct that bug before my customer even knew about it, which would make customers really happy if they called me and said, people are reporting errors or I got an error, and I could say, oh, I know, I already got an email about it and I fixed it. Now, we don't have the ability to send ourselves email on our AWS server, obviously as spam prevention, so we're not going to be able to enable this. in a production application, I highly recommend it. So these slides are here. There's also a couple links here. Some people also said they would really appreciate having extra reading or extra resources. So I'll try to add those into each lesson as well. So there's another quick tutorial on using try-catch as well as a video, but we're gonna go over these things together. But if you want to get explanation from some other developers, you can review both the tutorial and this, I think it's a 16-minute video as a supplemental resource. So I'll try to add these into each class. Okay, so let's deal with this problem first. I don't want to see this if I'm offline. I want to get a general error page. So first we're going to go and build a new file in the root that I'll call error.php. We'll include our header at the top, so we'll set title. So we'll include our header. So we're just going to put on a kind of a general message if anything goes wrong. So if we try to load the list of artists and our database connection fails, we want this page to load instead. You can put whatever content you want on here, but it's going to look like this. So now we're going to go to back to our artist page. And now, of course, it seems to be working, but the easy way to get this to crash is I'm just going to disconnect from the VPN. So if I turn it off, try artists again, it'll try to connect, but it's going to fail and print our database connection error to the screen. So I'll wait for the connection to time out. So now we're going to add a try-catch block to this page. So if anything goes wrong when we're trying to connect to the database and run our query, it'll take us here. So I'll go to the artist page, and right inside our PHP code, I'm going to open a try and a curly brace right underneath that opening tag before we connect to the database. So wherever we're interacting with the database and any subsequent code, that should be inside of a try block. Open try and open my curly brace. I'm going to come right down here before my closing PHP tag, and I'm going to close that try block with a closing tag. And now I'm going to catch any exceptions. And if any exception occurs, I want to redirect the user to the error page. So they will get this instead of this. So in PHP, we use this strange header method where we set the location. So this will do a redirect. Okay, so all of the original code, everything inside our set of PHP tags is now contained in my try block. Then we'll catch any errors and redirect. So now I'm still disconnected from the VPN, so my artist page won't load. So now when I try and refresh my artist page, it's going to try my connection. Once it throws this error, we should get bounced to the error.php file. So there's our simple error handling. Again, we wouldn't implement this until most of our site is done. There's one other little gotcha here with try catch that I will show you. I'm going to format my code. One thing you need to be aware of in PHP is try catch does not catch syntax errors. So if I do something like this, I take out my semicolon here and save. My code editor is telling me there's an error, right? I get a red underline. So you have to pay attention to these code hints. Yes, I will in just a moment. So if I try and load artists now, notice my error is not caught. So try catch, it catches runtime errors. It catches execution errors, but it does not do syntax checking. So your syntax errors, you need to use the code hints like this red underline and fix those. Here's the error page. So it's just our header, just a static page with our header injected at the top. Now we should repeat this process with our other artist pages. Our artist details page, our save artist, and our delete artist, they all need try catch blocks. That if anything goes wrong with our database, users should get this error page. So I'm going to go through each one of these and add our error handling. So on artist details, we actually need two try catch blocks. The first one is here. Or it could even go in here, I guess. Doesn't really matter. I'll just put it right here. So we'll try. Just indent it. We'll catch. I also want to add the try catch further down on this page. There's PHP code inside our select tag where we're filling our list of genres. So if that fails for any reason, again, we should be redirecting. So I'm going to copy that catch block because I'm going to repeat it down below. Okay, so I've started my try on line 5. Then we're catching errors just before our PHP tag closes on line 30. We've got another block of PHP code in here. Again, I'm going to wrap all this in a try. I'll close my curly brace and paste my catch here. So if either database operation fails, the user is going to get our error page. Try starts here just inside the PHP tags. And then our ending of try and our catch block comes after we try to disconnect. I'll try this out in my browser, make sure it's working. If I go to artist details, I'm still disconnected. So when my query tries to run to fill my drop-down list, this is going to fail without my database connection. And again, it bounces me over to the error page. I think I'll reconnect now. Try to reconnect. Okay, so when I have a connection, it works. But when I disconnect, I get my error. I also want to add those try catch blocks to save artist. So again, everything that's here, well, I've got to make a few changes now. First of all, we should include our header. So I'm going to take out all the HTML at the top of my page. We'll open with our PHP tag. We'll include the header. And then all of the code that's here, we're going to wrap in a try catch. So I'll open a try here. And right down at the bottom of our PHP, we'll add our closing try tag, curly brace, and our catch. Go all the way to the bottom. Close the try, catch. I also need, again, to change the path to the database file to includes. Okay, so at the bottom, close the try, paste in our catch, right at the very bottom of our PHP block. So we include the header at the top, open a try, and everything lives inside that try catch. And I'm going to do the same thing in a moment on the delete artist page. We'll replace the HTML at the top with our header. We'll open a try, and down at the very bottom of the page, we'll add our catch block. So we'll go to delete artist. Take out everything above my PHP tags. We'll include our header, and then we'll start our try. And then down at the bottom, we'll close the curly brace for the try. We'll paste in our catch. And again, here, our database link. Our DB file is now in the includes directory. Scroll to the bottom. Close the try with the curly brace. And paste in my catch block. Now we could add this to the genres pages as well. We're not really going to use those pages anymore. We only use them to populate the genres table in the database, so I'm not going to worry about those. We're primarily concerned with error handling in our 4 artists pages. The list page, the form, the save, and the delete. Does anybody have any questions about using try-catch in PHP? It's fairly simple. I know you've used try-catch before, probably in Java, but are there any questions? If you need to see any of the pages again, let me know and I will pull them back up. Okay, Akeem, you would use finally if there is additional code you want to have run, even whether there is an error or not. Finally won't really work in our case though because we're redirecting. So if you're redirecting, there's probably not much point in using finally because that finally isn't going to execute. But let's say, for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say we didn't want to redirect and our database connection maybe failed. You could disconnect in the finally block, for example. So if it crashed, like something happened in your query, it might leave your connection open. So you could close it in a finally block. Or you could destroy other variables in a finally block to remove them from memory. Does that help, Akeem? Okay, Mike, can you use multiple catch blocks? Yes, you can. You can catch specific errors. It's a good question, Mike. That's outlined in this tutorial here. So if you want to read a bit more about trapping for specific errors, so for example, you can do something like this. You could handle different types of exceptions and do different things. So if you were doing math, for example, you could have like a catch divide by 0 exception. You can trap for specific exceptions and handle them differently. You can read about that in this tutorial. If you want to be more intentional, more specific about it, you can. And many developers prefer to do that. They prefer to catch specific exceptions and handle them differently. And that's fine. This is a little bit of a simplified version where we're just catching any error. Excellent questions. Glad you guys brought those up. Okay, and keep in mind again, just reiterating, the try-catch will not handle your syntax errors. Those are still going to crash the page and show errors. So you want to use the code hint in your editor to try and catch those syntax errors before you publish your site. Now the other kind of error we still need to deal with, which will be handled differently, is a 404 error. We set up links to register, log in, but they don't actually work right now, and they're not going to work. So we're going to set up a 404 error page, and then we can do a little configuration on the web server so that if a 404 error occurs, we can load the 404 page. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my error page. I'm just going to copy everything here. And we're going to make a new error page. It's going to be similar to this one, but a little different. I'm going to make a new page called 404.php. I'm going to paste that in. I'll change the title to page not found. We'll say, you couldn't find the page you requested. So it's a more specific error message. I guess it could say the resource, because let's say it's a media file or something. So now we want to configure the server. We're going to use a special type of Apache configuration file for this, so that if a 404 error is generated, it will automatically load this page. The page looks like this in the browser. It says not found, we couldn't find. But we want it to load automatically when we click the register or login link. So we have to create a special file here. It's got a particular name. It's an Apache configuration file. It's called .htaccess. And there's nothing in front of the dot. So this allows us to configure various options on the web server. And one of the things we can configure is how to handle different HTTP status codes. So we set up an error document for the code 404. And we have to provide a full URL. For the moment, I'll use localhost. We'll change this after. We'll see why. So anytime a 404 error happens in this directory, load our 404.php. This should automatically redirect 404 requests to this URL. But it can't be a relative URL. It has to be a fully qualified with a domain name. So let's look at how this works. I can navigate around. When I click register, the htaccess now intercepts this 404 request and redirects us. I click login or any other URL. Even without a file extension, anything that's not recognized, let's say it's an image, logo.jpg, any resource at all, doesn't have to be PHP. If it's not found, this htaccess will take care of it. Now this works fine on my development machine, but we're going to need to make a slight change to this. Can anybody think of why? Why do we need to change this? I'm going to upload these files to AWS. What's the issue here? Or what will the issue be? Yeah, thank you, Yama, right? The file, I can upload in my files. So I'm going to re-upload my PHP tunes and just overwrite everything. Yeah, so we don't want it trying to load localhost. Ultimately, it needs to load, oh, I think this just died on me. So our path should use our live URL, not the local one. So what I really should do here is use the proper domain, which is https lamp.computerstudies with my username. So when there's an error, when this is running live, we want the live 404 page. You should be using this domain name, not the IP address that starts with 15. Not only is this easier to read, but this supports SSL, which we'll talk about next week. This just died on me. So I will disconnect and try it again. Okay, we'll try again. Now, one thing to note, if you go into it's AWS. I'm really frustrated. I've reached out again to our technician. We've upgraded our service on AWS, but it's just been up and down like this all day, which I know is frustrating for everyone. One thing to note, on mine, I can see my htaccess file. By default, you will not see it, and I'll explain why. Your operating system, because of this file name, it considers it a hidden file. And by default, in most FTP clients, this is hidden. You click on the server menu, there's an option that says force showing hidden file. If you enable that, you check that off, then you'll be able to see your .htaccess file. I'm just going to stop and remove all. I may have to upload this later. Doesn't look like my server connection is going to last long enough. So I'll upload these files to AWS if the server ever stays online long enough for me to do so. Okay. I'm going to upload the files we've worked on today to Git. No, that's working. So we've added try catch and 404 handling. So everything we've done today is uploaded to my Git repository now. Try one more time. Okay, so my htaccess did actually upload. Good, and all the files from today, I think they are here. Okay, so I should be able to try this out now. Okay, so here's my PHP tunes. I can go to artists, I can add, I can edit. When I click on register, it gives me the live 404. Same with login. Okay, so this result is what we want. Get rid of the Git folder on the server, that doesn't need to be there. Okay, but your htaccess needs to be here. Okay, so we don't have the ability to send ourselves email notifications, but for now we have some of the bare bones tools we need. Try catch, error page, 404 handling with htaccess. Okay, and in assignment 2, which I'll go over next week, I would like to see all of these things implemented. So you can find your midterm grade through quizzes on D2L. You do have a quiz this week, So make sure you've completed the in-class exercises. They are on GitHub if you need to reference it. We're adding our shared header, enabling error handling. You could read more about try catch. You've got an extra challenge of building a sticky footer if you like. And then the next two classes are critical. We're going to do authentication, register, login, hashing passwords, securing resources. Talk about SSL, all of that fun stuff. Okay, it's a bit early, so I'm happy to stick around in the WebEx room if people have questions or need help. If your code is working, you don't have questions, you're free to go, and I will see you next week.